with Muay Thai events, right, for the semi-contact ones, they don't need to have a doctor on site. They don't need to have an ambulance on site. The insurance is different than a full contact event. They don't need a sanctioning body. Anybody can host this. It's about making money. Swaddy Cop, welcome to this episode of the Pu'u Muay Thai Podcast. Today, you might notice video is a little bit different. I left my camera the last place I was traveling. So perks of traveling is traveling. The downsides of traveling is, you guessed it, traveling, right? So I'm overnighting one to where I'm at now. I'm traveling to Bangkok, Thailand on Monday. So I want to make sure I have that over there. I freaking lost my gimbal. So it's going to kind of make some of the content stuff I want to do over there a little bit more difficult, but not impossible. Just a little bit, some extra steps. And I can see if I can pick one up over there in Asia as well. So with that, today I wanted to talk about is something that was a topic of discussion. It came up on our feed on social media. It's about semi-contact Muay Thai events or kickboxing events for that matter, okay? So the first time I was exposed to these is when I was in Europe at the WKA event that was in Spain with my friend Travis Petralba. So I saw these and they're just on the mat. They're not in a ring and they're deemed as quote unquote semi-contact. All right. So these semi-contact events, I saw them like, oh shit, this is pretty good. It's actually like, it's a smoker, right? If you don't know what a smoker is like an inter-gym competition that's between other martial arts schools. They used to have them in a ring before there was like crackdowns in certain areas of the world where they started regulating Muay Thai and didn't allow these smokers to happen. And they call them smoker. It goes back from like a boxing term, from my understanding. And it's one of those things that like I grew up doing smokers. Like when I first started, we were doing smokers. That was normal. And kind of just sidetrack on that a little bit. Before I really jump into it, I'm going to give a shout out to everybody on the Muay Thai community Discord. All of you that are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube, all right? If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, okay? Kind of going into that, like I said, is we grew up doing these. They're smokers, right? So the smokers got banned in California and a lot of other places. There's more sanctioning. So a sanctioning organization, we've talked about it before here on the podcast. So it's like regulations with like a written down rule set and all like protections for the fighter, coaches, the promoter, the venue, and all those things. More like the legalities of full contact fighting in Western countries, right? Countries like Mexico, Thailand, like China, they don't give two shits about it. It's like, hey, you're fighting, that's you're liable on that. Where in the US, the way the legal code is and law is, you can't just do this stuff without there being some form of liability. All right. So when I saw these semi-contact events in Europe at WKA, I was like, oh crap, it's essentially a fight. This is a smoker. It's just on the mats, right? No ring. And I was like, oh, I'm surprised we don't see these in the USA. All right. So let's go to, I think it was in 2017. I saw some semi-contact events that were going around and I had a kids program. And I brought some kids to semi-contact. Oh, semi-contact, that means like, it says light contact and stuff like that too, right? So I brought the kids to their first one, right? And it was full contact, man. I'm like, oh crap, this is really good for adults. It's not gonna be so good for my kids, right? That I didn't really prep them for that because I didn't know what the rules were, right? They said light contact, semi-contact. It was not that, okay? So I made a mental note, these semi-contact events, they are full contact events for all intents and purposes. Those are the rules, but that's not what is put out there on the media. So for those that don't know, the reason why people do this. So going back into giving you that context on smokers being banned. All right. So the reason smokers were banned is because these different areas, not only for safety, they put it under safety, but also money, right? The states, the areas that regulate full contact sports in combat sports, like in California, for example, the California State Athletic Commission is overseen by the Department of Consumer Affairs, would regulate full contact competitions. And so with that, they would end up getting tax revenue, right? Not tax revenue, they get revenue from these events. They generate jobs, it's tax essentially that people are able to generate through these events for the state. So the state wanted their piece because they saw more activity. right? Just in a nutshell, it's like it comes down to money. You could track everything up to money, but also safety and standards, because you do have to have safety and you do have to have standards for full contact events. So to give you some like reference on this too, for like a full contact event in California, it's probably going to be around $15,000. You have to rent the ring, right? You have to have the insurance for it, the venue, the seating, the staff. You sell tickets, you have to promote it. And then on top of that, one of the other big things in there is so sanctioning, right? Regulatory stuff, but also an ambulance on site. So ambulance is going to be anywhere from like $2,500 to $3,000 minimum in the US. That's just what it's going to cost for them to be there for 8 hours or so. When it comes into that's a pretty substantial chunk of change. Like I just wanted to have a smoker at my gym and have like another gym come. And now all of a sudden we're having to foot $15,000, right? Can't do it. So one of the regulations that goes into that is if it is deemed as a semi-contact event and it does not take place in a ring, so it takes place on a mat, it is now not having to be regulated by these laws because it's deemed as semi-contact, all right? Some areas have already cracked down on this and have made it so that way people, like, in order to have these events, they make it so they have to treat them like full contact events and have all the insurance and have the ambulance and have the doctor on site, right? These semi-contact events, there's actually no real regulation on them, all right? So before I get into the nitty and gritty on this is I'm not calling out any organization. I'm not calling out any promoter. I'm not calling out any particular event. It is across the board about how these things are ran, all right? From what I'm seeing in the United States, okay? Some are done better, in my opinion. Some are done worse, in my opinion. I'm going to be as objective as possible. I'm not going to name names on them. I'm just going to talk to you about the different styles of events that I have seen and what I like about some of them and what I don't like about some of them, all right? So with Muay Thai events, right, for the semi-contact ones, they don't need to have a doctor on site. They don't need to have an ambulance on site, right? The insurance is different than a full contact event. They don't need a sanctioning body. Anybody can host this, right? So all of a sudden, I'm going from $15,000 to like, $3,000, $4,000 for an event with this insurance and with a venue and stuff like that, or I have it at my school, right? So that's a substantial bump in money for somebody. It's about making money, right? And there's a lot of activity that comes into it. But with different organizations and the way that they build Muay Thai, with these different rules and regulations, some of them, they change the rules and the regulations and how you judge these quote unquote semi-contact events, all right? So now you're having people doing all these, like they're essentially modern smokers, but then the judging criteria is completely different than full contact, right? So you have people who are doing these smokers, and some people, some organizations say that these do not count on your record, all right? Almost every Muay Thai organization in the US says these count on the record, but there are some where they, for their organization, they say they do not count on the record. And for their organization, they have their own rules and their standard, they don't. But if you go to another organization, majority of these, the PKB, the semi-contact, the MDL, this stuff counts on people's records, all right? So it goes into general experience is what that comes into. All right. So going through all that, right? Again, going back to the money thing and with the regulatory stuff, I've been talking about this for years about how this is going to have an effect, right? So 2020 happened, right? COVID completely shut down everything. We had no fight sports. I think I saw in Cambodia, they were spraying people down with some weird mystery liquid so they could fight between rounds. It was insane. It was insane. It's insanity. That's what that was. Once we went from that, and then we went over to go over in, 2021 when they started doing events again in some states, right? Like Arizona opened up and they had full contact events happening. But back in California, they did not allow the full contact events to happen because of stay-at-home orders and things like that, which if you've listened to the podcast or the videos, we have our opinions on it. I'm not going to talk about it here. But going back onto the semi-contact, so they weren't allowing full contact events in California. but they were allowing semi-contact events to happen in California. And what falls under that semi-contact thing, right? These semi-contact Muay Thai events. So they fucking blew up. They just straight up blew up because it was the only thing that fighters in California could do was this, quote, semi-contact events. These are straight up smokers. And then we saw these events blow up, like absolutely blew up. And I think a lot of these organizations didn't expect it to blow up as much as it did. I mean, I didn't. I'm sure they're like, for them, hey, good for you, make money. Hell yeah, like do it. And that goes more into like my whole like capitalist mindset, right? It's like, hey man, go make money, absolutely. But from like a Muay Thai standpoint, it's going to mess up the sport in some way, right? Because now we're getting away from full contact stuff, which you've been fighting for years to get, right? For years. My mentor was one of those people that helped get full contact rules for Muay Thai regulated. So that way you can elbow people, you can knee people in the face and stuff. So now we're kind of taking a step back, but it was because it was the only thing we could do, right? But it blew up and then it stayed, all right? And then we have people who are doing 10 semi-contact events and they're going to full contact tournaments saying they have no experience, right? This is a problem because there's a C, B, A class, and sometimes there's an open class. Someone registers as a C class with 10 semi-contact events, they're actually A class, right? In these tournaments, according to their regulations, which are different than these other organizations, right? This creates a lot of confusion, stuff like that as well. Going in through that, right? Like I've seen people get knocked out at these semi-contact events. And a lot of these events that do happen, that have the knockouts happen, they yell at everybody, don't post it up online, we're gonna get shut down, but they happen. I've seen like at least 5, okay, at events that I have been at where someone got knocked out, okay? I've seen more than that online that's posted up. That is the reality of this because there is no like standard for it. Some events there's more, some events there's less, some they have none, right? There's events where they have absolutely none, right? But it depends about who the officials are, who's running the event, who are the coaches, how's the rules meeting conducted, how do they regulate contact, right? It's really hard when you have a winner and a loser, right? And they're new, they've never competed before, and they tell them to not go too hard. That is like absolutely insane. For me, my first smoker, no one was telling me not to go too hard. It was like, go, go, go. That's what you did. So I can understand that, and training beginners and seeing the anxiety of just sparring for beginners and stuff like that. People going to competition first time, I totally get it, right? And so we go through this, right? We have people who are competing at these semi-contact events, different rule sets, going to full contact, feeling like they're getting robbed because the judging it's different because they set up for semi-contact. They change the rules because number one in Muay Thai judging criteria is damage. And if you're doing quote unquote semi-contact, you can't judge on damage, right? You just can't because that's not the intended purpose of that event and that rule set, right? So you can see where this gets messy because if somebody has 10, 15 semi-contact events, and then they have 10, and then against somebody who has 10, 15 full contact events, and they fight on a full contact event, generally the full contact fighter is going to do better, all right, generally. And it's going to be maybe look like a mismatch in some cases as well. Not all the time, but majority of the time. In my experience, from what I've seen as a referee, as a judge, working around the world, okay? So we have all this, all right? We have all this data and the stuff with the semi-contact, right? It's a way to make money for these organizations, which like I'm not knocking on them. They should have an opportunity to make money, right? But there's certain safety standards that are skirted with certain ones, right? And this is the premise of this that I'm bringing up today. So this actually came up on my feed from bloodyelbow.com. And I'll read it for you. Appeal. Help family of amateur competitor who suffered, quote, irreversible, end quote, brain injury in kickboxing tournament. Lei Zhenhuan suffered a traumatic brain injury at an amateur kickboxing tournament in Canada, and his family needs help. There's a picture of him with his headgear on, with his 16-ounce gloves on, big padded shin guards on, right? On the mat. This is a semi-contact event. There's a picture next to him, and it's him sitting there with a tube up his nose. This is freaking tragic, man. So a tragedy at amateur kickboxing event. An unimaginable tragedy struck a young athlete at an amateur kickboxing event in Vancouver, British Columbia. Lei Zhenhuan suffered what doctors are calling an irreversible brain injury. Lei, a PhD student studying at the University of British Columbia, attended a hobbyist level kickboxing tournament on October 14th, 2023. The bouts were advertised as, quote, light and, quote, controlled contact, with participants competing in multiple bouts in the same day. Lei had 3 bouts. Shortly following his final bout, Lei's health rapidly deteriorated and he lost consciousness. And I'm going to say, I'm not saying all of them. I don't know about this one. I'm not talking bad about this one. This is just something for you to be aware of that are listening out there. You're watching on YouTube. You go to these events, know what you're getting into, be prepared, and talk to the events. Okay, know what you're walking into. This is freaking terrible. So again, this is one of those semi-contact events that was going on, right? Semi-contact events. Let's go on. He was evacuated to a hospital where an acute subdural hematoma was diagnosed, a life-threatening traumatic brain bleed. It has now been over 3 months. He lies in a vegetative state at Royal Columbian Hospital. It is unclear if or when he will regain consciousness. Lei was in Canada on a student visa. He has no family in his town, and his mother has flown overseas to be by his bedside. His family needs help. In a recent filing in the British Columbia Supreme Court for committeeship, an application for a family member to be appointed as legal guardian to be able to look after his affairs, 2 treating physicians have called this injury irreversible, knowing that there is very little likelihood that the condition will improve or that he will be able to care for himself in the future. The family is facing significant expenses while Canadian public insurance is in place for his hospital needs. He likely will soon be transferred to long-term care where private funding can pay for better conditions. Additionally, being in Canada on a student visa means his family is facing the reality of getting Lei home. They have been told a medical transportation flight can cost north of $100,000 US. So there is a GoFundMe on this too, guys. I'm going to post it down in the show notes and down in the description on this. Please go donate to the family. If you're watching this, go check it out because I'm looking at it right now. It's got about $6,000 Canadian on it. I'm donating onto it right after this too because this is just fucking tragic, man. It could have been prevented in many ways, I'm assuming. Hopefully, right? So the person who wrote this launched a fundraiser. I'd like to thank Bloody Elbow for allowing me to write this guest post to help spread the word. Thank you for everyone who has shared this fundraiser, donated, or both. All right. So this, like I said, this is just a freaking tragedy, man. This is one of those things that the reason why they have regulations and they have rules, right? And skirting around those rules and regulations, not every event is going to be the same. Not every organization is going to be the same quality, the same safety standards, right? Again, it's about money. But when money and profit comes before somebody's health and wellness, you got to take a look at yourself. But that's part of the promoter and fight game. I've met some slam ball promoters in this world, and not all of them are the best people. They have great shows, don't get me wrong, but I've seen a promoter argue that he's not going to pay for somebody to get their stitches at their event that they were the main event at. I've seen this before. All right. So that's just the nature of it. They don't want to lose money, whatever it may be. But in this event, where Lei, I hope you make a recover and you're able to go through this. This is just absolutely tragic. He's wearing a shirt that says Muay Thai on this. This is kickboxing, but it's a semi-contact Muay Thai event is what I'm going to guess. This is kind of one of those things that there's a lot of talk in the Muay Thai community about these semi-contact events and how they should be controlled. Like I said, some organizations are making new standards and doing more training for their ring officials and stuff like that too. So I just wanted to bring that up because it is an absolute, it's one of those things, it's the freaking elephant in the room, in my opinion, in North America for Muay Thai is these semi-contact events and how they are conducted. All right, so I'm going to get into some questions. Again, the link is going to be down in the show notes. If you are listening to this, go donate to Lei and his family, man. He had 6,000 Canadian on there. I'm going to donate some cash on there right now. Please go donate. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link's going to be in the show notes. Go check it out. If it's not there after you go on there, I'm sure they'll have some updates on the GoFundMe as well. So we have some questions that are coming in over on TikTok as well. So I'm going to scroll through these. I see some regulars popping in. What's up, guys? Let's go down here. So I saw some really good questions pop in, and I want to make sure to address them. So from Benji Warren on TikTok says, I'm debating between learning kickboxing or Muay Thai. What's the most significant difference? So the difference between Muay Thai and kickboxing, I've actually made a whole YouTube video on this about the difference between Muay Thai and kickboxing and how kickboxing actually came from Muay Thai through a Japanese boxing promoter that went to Thailand. He saw Muay Thai. He brought his Japanese karateka fighters over to go fight. They got beat up. So he started cross-training his karate fighters in Thailand in Muay Thai. And then he brought kickboxing back to Japan because he's like, hey, people aren't going to be doing this crazy shit over there. So he got rid of the knees, he got rid of the elbows, he got rid of the low kicks, and they called it kickboxing, right? In layman's terms, that's what I'm going to say. And then when it comes into scoring and judging, I've talked about it here ad nauseum. Muay Thai is judged on damage, right? Kickboxing is judged on contact, right? If I get hit here and it hits my glove and if it still rocks my head back, that's considered a block. In Muay Thai, it moves my head back like this, and it snaps my head back. Even if it hits my glove, that is not a block. That still has effect. That shows damage. Okay, so that's going to be the biggest thing. And I would say that you should definitely lean towards Muay Thai if you have a Muay Thai program in there. Some of the strongest people in the kickboxing sport are from a Muay Thai background. Tawan Chai, you got Super Bon, just to name a few. Okay, and Giorgio Petrosian, who was arguably one of the better ones of like our modern era. All right, so I'm gonna go down here more. There's just a couple more questions that are on here. Thank you for all the love that we got over on TikTok. And for those of you that are over here on YouTube as well, thank you guys, I appreciate it. So got another one here from Flanders. Can I use boxing gloves for training and sparring? Absolutely, but when you say boxing gloves, those Everlast gloves, the sporting goods store gloves, Flanders, you're not going to want to be using those. You don't want to be that guy. Get yours some good quality gloves that are for sparring. All right. So I'd say training gloves and sparring gloves should be different. I understand when you're first starting, there's some different things. Get a 14-ounce glove if you're under 175, 180 pounds. That way you can do light contact stuff with it. You're not doing heavy sparring with it anyways, unless you're competing. In that case, invest in your equipment. I've talked about that here as well, about these shin guards that you should not spar with. And that you should not have. Same thing with your gloves. Okay, so very, very important that you invest in the proper training equipment. If you're trying to save money, usually boxing gloves can be used, just have to have the right ounce for the right purpose, okay? From LB Frankie on TikTok, I want to compete, but I'm nervous. Should I compete? LB Frankie, absolutely. So don't let this dissuade you, this conversation that I was talking about in here. Compete at a safe, regulated event. Talk with your coach, use all the training resources that are out there. I have a great book. It is free on our podcast. The link is in the bio inside of our TikTok. All right. It's called Preparing for Your First Muay Thai Fight. You can go listen to it for free. I read the whole thing over on our podcast. If you want to buy it, you want to support, you can buy it direct from us. It's signed copy, or you can buy it from Amazon. You can get the digital version on Amazon or the paperback. Okay. But you should definitely compete if you're nervous. Consult with your coach though, okay? Figure out what is expected of you. What are the standards and is expected of you? And it's probably gonna sound hard, but if others are competing at your school, chances are it's doable, okay? So listen to your coach, do everything that's asked of you. Everything else is extra credit, all right? So that's going to be it for our questions today. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Next time you're going to be seeing a video from me is going to be from Thailand. I'm going to be traveling in Bangkok for the amazing Muay Thai Festival, WBC Festival that's coming up next weekend. When this drops, I'm going to be in Bangkok, Thailand at that bad boy, okay? Don't forget, smash that subscribe button, hit share button, share this with somebody, tag somebody who's doing these semi-contact events. So that way they know what they're getting into. That way they know the differences amongst all of it as well. All right. So again, not talking about any organization, not talking about any person. It's just across the board. Got to be honest. That's what it's about. It's about money in the sport. I get it. That's what people used to do smokers for. But remember, some of them are more safe than others. That's just the way it is. And it doesn't always depend on the organization. Sometimes it's a certain promoter within an organization that's like this too, that cut corners, right? And you don't want to cut corners when it comes into your safety and well-being, right? So again, go check out the GoFundMe down below for Lei. And don't forget, like this is a contact sport. That's what the stuff is unfortunate. It does happen. I hope that he does make a recovery. I've seen people make recovery from injuries before, from brain injuries. If it's a traumatic brain injury, typically not the same, like the doctors are saying, but you can make a recovery from it. I hope the best for him and his family, and they're able to get some of this money together. Okay, so what do you got?